right. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining today's session hosted by ARA SIG 93, Research on Learning and Instruction in Physical Education. I am Yongjin Lee, a graduate representative of this SIG and studying at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. This is our second webinar of this year, specifically designed to support graduate students and early career scholars as they navigate the faculty job market. So
Mm.
last year, our graduate representative, Dr. Kim, hosted a session featuring recently hired faculty members who shared their personal successful stories, from preparing applications to navigating interviews and negotiations. Today, we are shifting our focus to the other side of the table. So we have invited four experienced professionals who have served on search committee within like 3 years. So by hearing from those who actually evaluated candidates, will gain a comprehensive perspective on what it takes on to stand out in a competitive market. So our panelists and topics are Dr. Bernstein from Queens College will provide an overview of the process. Thank you. And Dr. Stark from University of Wisconsin-La Crosse will discuss application process, application review. And Dr. Olson from Kean University will share tips for online interviews. Dr. Liu from Cal State Fullerton will cover on-campus interviews. So each presenter will speak for about 10 minutes. We'll conclude with a Q&A session. So please post your questions if you have in the chat box throughout the presentations. I will collect them to ask the panelists at the end of the presentations, and you may ask directly during the Q&A session. So huge thanks to all the presenters for sharing their expertise today. And Dr. Bernstein, the floor is yours.
All right. So today, I was selected to go over the overview of hiring for potential candidates. And I had the graduate program for teacher education at Queens College in physical education. And it's a large public university in the CUNY system. And the hiring processes may vary according to the different speakers and the different colleges from what I'm about to present. But today I'm going to present the overview of the hiring process. So I'm going to start first with the departmental end of it. And these are the steps that happen kind of behind the scenes. So the chair selects the committee, and a search committee is formed, and the chair asks if the faculty will want to serve on it. And then once that is formed, the committee does the following. So the committee develops an ad with the needed criteria of the position, and the committee develops a rubric based on that criteria, and each committee member develops one or two questions to ask the candidate. So the questions are then voted and approved by the committee. So those questions are basically formulated on what is needed, or what the rubric of the criteria suggest. And then all this information is given to the HR department for approval. And the entire committee must engage in training by HR and the college regarding the search. So we have to be approved, each and every member of the committee. And after the information is reviewed and approved by the college, the search is then approved entirely, and we can go forward. So ads are placed and recorded for the college to be submitted after the search. And there is, when we're asking questions, there is a time limit when asking questions. So each candidate who is interviewed gets the same amount of time, and each committee member asks the same questions. So we can't chit chat. So
Mm.
everything is very, very fair. And each faculty applicant will be given the same question and the same amount of time in the interview. So there's no deviations. And if the faculty member knows a candidate, which is possible because we go to conferences and we're all in the same field, the that faculty member on the committee will be taken off the pool and recused from interviewing that uh, candidate. So, so there's after all this takes place, we come back, we talk about the candidates, we look at our rubric, and then a pool of 3 or 4 candidates are selected from the criteria, and then they are invited to campus for the second round of interviews. So let me just see if I can get my slides here up. So now we're with the faculty when they come on campus. So there's some things to consider when you're coming to an interview for the second round. So you want to make sure that your CV is proofread. I know that sounds silly, but you want to make sure everything's up to date and don't pad it. Don't pad your CV. Make sure that you have all the information of what you're doing and um, um, that you have your graduation dates honest. Because ABD, if you're about to graduate, it's better than saying ABD and it's going to take a couple years to graduate, especially when you're been hired and you have a lot of new responsibilities. You want to make sure that you finish your dissertation, so and your process. So in the ad, read the criteria carefully. Okay. And if it states terminal degree, make sure that you are close to that in your field. Not only do you not want to be ABD, but sometimes in the search process, we say terminal degree or EDD or PhD required, and we get a lot of master's students. So you want to make sure that you have the right degree. Um, and make sure that before the interview that you're familiar with both the faculty and their research. This is helpful because if hired, you can collaborate on projects. So you want to make sure that you have um, some kind of intersect there. And you also want to look at the courses that are offered in the department. So not only are we going to have research, teaching, and service in our university, but you're also teaching is important. So if you have research, just make sure that you look at the courses and you're able to feel comfortable with teaching. So if the faculty asks, can you teach these courses? Make sure you're up to date with the courses and that you're able to answer which courses that you'll be able to teach. And I know this sounds silly, but make sure that you have a quiet place to interview. So, and that you're ready and be prepared for the Zoom interview. So make sure that your sound is working and make sure that um, you have a quiet place. And then once you go to the college, we give you travel arrangements. So um, also, the candidates, the 3 or 4 candidates that come on campus, are based on the criteria which are selected for the interview, and that's another interview that's been approved. And this process, once you come on campus for the second round of interviews, this process lasts all day. And candidates come in the morning and they leave around 3 or 4. And so During this time, they meet with different offices on campus. For example, the dean, the grants officer, the committee, the faculty. And so this is a very long process. And finally, after this is done, out of those candidates, a final candidate is selected, and the committee writes a summation of why the candidate is appropriate, and the college then approves that search. And then we have a hiring offer. So that's the overview of the process on our campus. At least it might vary for different campuses. But if you have any questions, my email's right there, and you're welcome to contact me for any information that you would like. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bernstein. It was good overview of the process. Thank you, Mara. So we're gonna do have a Q&A session at the end of all presentations. So Dr. Stark, can you explain, discuss application review?
One second here. All right. Is that good for everyone to see? Okay. All right. Sounds good. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me to be here today. This is so exciting to be able to speak to everybody about this process. I have had the opportunity to serve as a chair for multiple years at the University of Wisconsin-La Crosse. So, and not that long ago, just less than 10 years ago, I was in the role of, looking for positions. And it's been a learning process for sure. But today I'm going to be talking about the applicant and document review process. And I will second what Dr. Bernstein said as well, is that, this is our perspective from our university that I've had. And this is the only university that I have been at yet. So that might change as well. And this is coming from a perspective of an R3 university. So we're very teaching focused. So some of that might change. So just keep that in context as I go through this process, that it might vary across the board. Okay, so to start, I'm going to talk with you about just basically the introduction to recruitment, like who is the committee, how that starts, our initial screening, reviewing some documents, and then thinking like a committee. So, and some helpful tips along the way to kind of get you rolling. So again, it's awesome that some of this overlaps a bit with what Dr. Bernstein said. But I wanted to talk to you a bit about the search committee and just to kind of give you perspective and why that impacts our document review process. I'm going to start in the bottom left here. Just so you're aware, especially at our university, our members on our search are not only just people within our program, they also might be other people within our department and then also across the department. And so that's important, and we'll talk more about that. But making sure that the criteria and how you write is communicated, so really anyone can understand what we're talking about. I know we are in our field and it's specialized, but I think that's just important to think about when you're writing and creating your materials. As a search committee, our other role is not only to just ensure that the hire or the candidate aligns with the requirements of our program, but also needs within our department and also the university. So you might look and see the broader programs that are in our particular department and speak to, you might have some strengths there that could add into your applicants and your documentation as well. Our job really is to make sure that we create a fair process in making sure that you not only meet the criteria and you are a good fit, but also that we provide an equitable search for you within that process. And at the bottom right there, we have an applicant tip. And I think it's just important to think about. And again, this is just for our university. And I'm going to talk more about this. But if you do not meet the minimum qualifications for our search, we cannot review you, even if we think you're an awesome candidate and would be amazing. We can't even contact you after our initial review process. So I just want to put that out there, and I'll make note about that and how you can strengthen your documents as we move forward. So, just on our initial screening search, the first thing that we do is review your application for minimum qualifications. So, on job search, you often have like a preferred or a required, and this would be the required qualifications. So, we look at do you have the degree? For example, at our university, we often require teaching experience in 3 years in the state of Wisconsin. And do you have, for example, our undergraduate program is health education adapted and school or and physical education. So for us, that is often a required qualification. And so making sure that you have those minimum qualifications to be able to move your process forward. That's the first step. The second step is a preferred. So then we kind of assess, okay, well, have you met those minimum qualifications? And if yes, you do you also meet our preferred? And that would move us to step three, which would categorize based on our rubric, moving you into a tiering system of a one, two, or three. And that's the tier that meets the preferred and the minimum requirements are who we would move forward in that application process. Something I has been pretty interesting to me, and that's changed a bit over the years, but I do want to highlight for your application, make sure that you use the exact wording of the required minimum qualifications. And if you know that you've met it, but it's not explicit in your materials, we cannot infer that you have met those qualifications. So, for example, maybe you don't have 3 years of independent K-12 teaching, but you have served as a GA role in a school where you are on like the record of instructor, right? And so, because you have that in your materials, and it's explicit, we can then move forward with that and talk about do you meet it, do you not meet it? Are there some small exceptions to the rule? But if it's not in your materials at all, we cannot move forward with you. And it's really unfortunate because we sometimes know folks that have, but we can't reach out for further information due to that fair screening process that I talked about prior to in the HR process. So when we're reviewing your documents, besides that initial screening process, we have your materials listed there, and some universities might require others or less than this. But one thing that I want you to make sure that you know is submit by the specified deadline on the posting. Get that in first. And that's important because that constitutes our first review deadline and gives you optimal opportunity to be reviewed. Now, that doesn't mean I haven't asked at the bottom that if you miss that deadline, not to apply because we are always going back into it. And it's up to our search committee to determine whether, man, this is a cool applicant or we think they're really strong. If we haven't gotten too far in the process, we may still pull your application. So please don't be dissuaded by that. Um, Other things that we're looking for is that your application is relevant to our job posting. I know you are applying to a lot of different positions, and rightfully so, you should, but taking the time to make sure that you meet our qualifications in our specific university and that it's really meaningful that you've taken the time to do that. And that goes into our next bullet, which is personalized to the university and the search committee. So it might be on the job posting that there is a search chair at the bottom of it. Address it to that particular search chair, I think shows that you're taking the time and you're really looking at the details in this process. Another thing that we look for is verifying alignment across the materials. You might be applying for R1 or R3 universities, but making sure that your statement about what you're really passionate about, whether that's research or teaching or both, that that is consistent across your materials, and that you've taken the time to make sure that it really aligns up. And then we also look that you could be a potential good fit within the department. So, for example, you might not be in physical education, but it might be that you're really strong in motor behavior or motor learning, and that might be highlighted. Might not be your top priority, but you could contribute to the department in a really meaningful way, and that might kick you up a notch on who we want to interview. Some applicant tips, just use clear and specific evidence to support your claims. Talk about what you've done. Take the time to research the university thoroughly and emphasize how you align with our values and goals specifically. And again, just want to make clear if the criteria are not explicitly addressed in your materials, you have to say how you meet them. Otherwise, we cannot move forward with you or infer. And you might be an awesome candidate and we're missing out. And so are you. Some questions that we like to think about, we just kind of talk about through this application process beyond those initial screening requirements. Will they be a strong colleague? Okay. Do they align with our university? Like if they have this massive research agenda, but yet you're telling me you're teaching focused and we haven't had the opportunity to teach, talk to us about why that is. It might be based on your doctoral training that you've been in, but teaching is really your passion, right? And make sure that your teaching supports your research. Do you fill a gap for us? Take the time to maybe look at some of the faculty that are in that program, and kind of talk about how you could potentially collaborate with them and how your research interests might align with those. I've been shocked and surprised too in my time here, how awesome our research agendas have aligned, and I didn't know, right? And but taking the time to really talk about that, and again, how you could help our department and our university. And then one other thought that has just kind of come up, and this is not super common, but if your timeline shows a gap, and you've made a significant career change, or maybe you weren't hired right away, make sure you talk about that at just minimum. It doesn't have to be huge, but just kind of share that information because we're always wondering why is there this gap? So don't make us guess, just tell us. And then again, express your enthusiasm for this particular job and career path and make that really explicit. Common mistakes again, and I've talked about most of these already, but I just want to review. Make sure that your cover letter is not generic. Again, take the time to speak to the university, speak to the committee that is searching, and why your particular goals align with the particular university that you're applying for. So, research institution, research driven focused for your cover letter. On the bottom here, inconsistent information. I talked about ensuring alignment across all of them, aligning with the priorities. In addition to your cover letter, you might think about reframing your CV as well. So if you've applied to a teaching institution, make sure that after you have your information, that your teaching experience is at the top. I don't want to dig through like 20 pages to try to find your teaching experience if that's the priority for us. If it's a research institution, you might have your publications and or grants to support that you could be a really good candidate for that process and take the time to realign that. Dr. Bernstein talked about this as well. Please review your application. Just make sure that you don't have missing files or errors in your writing. Please review it. It does happen. And then again, finally, making sure that your materials are digestible for all committee members so they can truly understand who you are, what you want to do, and that you'd be a really awesome fit for our program. Okay, final advice. Do I meet the qualifications? This is something that's popped up for us, and this has to do with where you were trained and or your experience. And this has been common potentially with like programs that may not provide, let's say health education might not be a major where you are, but health ed might be built into your physical education training based on your university and where you're coming from. So making sure that you explicitly state that health education is a part of my physical education major for where I am from. Again, we can't infer that, and other folks do not understand your training or how you were. So making sure that you explicitly state how you meet them. I can't say that enough. Have you demonstrated a strong fit? Do you align with it? Are there possible collaborations? Are my statements again aligned with institutional goals? Right? And then finally, again, just review your files, verify alignment, check for errors, seek feedback from folks, and collaborate with folks to enhance the quality of that process for you. And I think that is it. And again, feel free to reach out or ask any questions if you need to.
Thank you so much. So we need to be more explicit, right? Yeah, that's the key. Thank you so much for the paper review, like application review. Like it's time to move on to like online interview.
Okay. Let's see if I can. That kind of okay. Can everybody see that? So, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ted Olson. I'm an associate professor and chair of the Department of Elementary and Physical Education at Kean University. Kean University, as many of you may or may not know, we're nestled in Union County, New Jersey, about 30 minutes outside of New York City, as well as we have satellite campuses throughout New Jersey, as well as over in Wenzhou, China. Like Dr. Bernstein and Dr. Starks talked about, some of the things I'll be talking to you about with regards to nailing online interviews for a tenure track faculty position in higher education. There may see some overlaps here too, and I think the big takeaway is just the reinforcement of those overlaps as you position yourself for a teaching position in higher education. So again, thank you for having me for today. My presentation, I have really three major aspects when it comes to trying to nail down the online interviews. One I would say is beginning with preparing for the interview, okay, what that looks like during the interview itself, and being able to put your best foot forward because you will be in front of a committee, so it can be nerve-wracking. But it's just some things to keep in mind. And then post-interview is after you have your online interview, some things that you also want to think about as you're moving forward and applying to other positions as well as the position you applied for in this one. So in terms of preparing for the interview, again, this will overlap Dr. Bernstein and Dr. Stark a bit, but the big thing I would ask yourselves is to consider the geographic location. Is this an area where you're applying that you really want to live? Because the committee is going to put a lot of time, effort into reviewing the applications and having you on campus and doing the interviews. So one of the big things I would say is do you envision yourself wanting to live there? And of course, you may not have a chance to get there and see it yet, but to try to envision that as best you can really is important in terms of, if you get the position. Second, you want to research really the university mission, the vision, and the strategic plan. So you want to really have a fundamental understanding of what are the goals and what are the core values of the university, and how does their plan sort of align up with your teaching, your research, and your service. Once you've had that umbrella of the university, I would turn your attention to the college. So for us, it would be the College of Education. And so I recommend doing a lot of research as to what are the pillars of the College of Education? What does the College of Education value? What do they feel it's important? And then I would do a deep dive into the program. How many faculty are in the program? What courses are offered in the program? And in particular, Dr. Bernstein talked about this, is the guide sheet. The committee will most likely ask you what are some courses you might be interested in teaching. And so you want to be pretty familiar with that guide sheet to understand, as well as the course catalog where you can get the description of each of the courses. You want to research the faculty members' research agendas and publications. And this sort of goes with the next point about discussing your own research, teaching, and service. You really want to show that you've done your homework in understanding what are your colleagues in the department, what are their strengths, what are some maybe areas that you can support or improve, and how does that all align? Because that's going to be one of the key things, and Dr. Stark talked about this, is about alignment and a good fit. And that's a real key piece that you want to really try to iron out before the interview. Next, you want to anticipate questions and write responses. Even if you have to say the responses in your car out loud, just speaking it through helps you to prepare for the interview. But really sitting down and writing out 5, 10, 15 questions that just possibly you think they're going to ask you will help you in terms of your confidence going into that interview. And then you want to have 3 to 5 questions for the committee. That would be a really good thing to have, particularly at the end of the interview is really when you have that opportunity to ask any questions you have. And that may come up through your research with the university mission or the vision or the program itself or research agendas of the faculty, etc. And then those of you who are ABD, it's really critical to know your defense date and then communicate the status of your dissertation. So that is certainly one thing that the committee, at least at our school, will definitely look for, is to know your defense date and the status of your dissertation. So next, I'd like to talk about what to do, during the interview, particularly as it relates to an online interview. First and foremost, professional attire. I can't say enough, to make sure that when you're interviewing, you're in, a suit of some kind. You want to greet the committee and know the committee members' names, and really try to get to know them in the beginning stages of the interview process. You want to speak clearly and effectively. You don't want to rush, but you don't want to be too slow. But you want to be sure that you're able to enunciate and be able to pronounce words clearly and effectively. You want to answer the questions directly and succinctly. I can't tell you how many times that we've done interviews and we've often said to ourselves, the candidate never answered the question directly. They answered it in a circuitous type way, but not directly. So that's really an area where you can do really well on the interview. Is really restating the question in form of a statement. Draw from your experiences in answering the questions. So really what we want to hear is, what have you done and accomplished, not as much what you hope to do, because the committee is trying to get an understanding is your future potential. So the more you can draw from your experiences, whether that be from being a GA to being in the K-12 system, to all the above, that's really, key in answering your questions. Don't be afraid to ask the committee to repeat or even clarify a question. There's really nothing wrong with that. I wouldn't do it for every single question, but certainly, if you had to do it for a few questions, that's okay. Also, don't be afraid to pause and think about the question before you answer it. That's okay too. What that shows the committee is that you're processing, that you're thinking things through, that you're not just rushing to answer it, but that you're really thinking of all the different, avenues and angles to the question. Be comfortable talking about yourself and show your personality. A lot of the questions that you're going to get online is going to be really about, your fit. And as Dr. Stark said, it's really about, are you a fit with the team? It's not necessarily about how much do you know, but how well you're going to work together with the faculty to grow the program, to advance the program as a team. And then, of course, I will leave your questions to the end of the interview. And what I did here was I just gave you a sample questions that I'll show you. Let's see if I can pull it up, hopefully, of some questions we've asked in the past, so you have a little bit more concrete idea. Can you see that okay?
Yep.
Okay, so just again, these are some questions that we've done. This is for our round one interviews. So question one, can you please tell us about your background, your work experience, what brought you to apply to King University? Our program is offered on 2 campuses, Union and Ocean. Would you be willing to travel to both? So for us, traveling and being on both campuses was a big thing. Please tell us about your teaching philosophy and your style. What is your experience teaching with a diverse student population? What is your experience teaching health and physical education courses at the K-12 or higher ed levels? In this position, we anticipate that you will teach the following courses: wellness, critical issues in health, methods. On a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest, how would you rate your willingness to learn and adapt to teaching these courses? So again, you may not be perfectly fit for every single course, but would you be willing to adapt and learn to teach new courses? Question 7, we currently have one K-12 health methods course with a 10-hour progressive clinical component where students implement health lessons in authentic K-12 setting. Our goal is to have 2 health education methods courses, K-6 and 7-12. How would you approach this 10-hour progressive clinical component? That would be going into the schools and teaching based on your methods class. And then questions 8, 9, and 10 are really more generic. Please tell us about your research agenda along with any publications or grants. Please tell us about your service to the profession, community, current or previous in school, university. And then finally, what questions do you have for us in the position, the department, and any questions you would like to answer? So those are just some sample questions that I wanted to share with the team, just so you can get a feel for what might be asked during the interview. And then finally, to close, what I recommend is after the interview is make sure you write an email to the committee chair thanking him or her. That's really, really important. I can't stress that enough to you. It doesn't have to be a long email, but a simple few sentences goes a long way, and also just reinforcing your interest in the position. And then take some time to self-reflect. I like to call it good, better, how. So what do you think you did well on the interview? What do you think you could do better? And how would you do it? And sometimes it takes a couple of interviews to go through, or a couple mock interviews to go through, to really get it down to where you'd like it. Also recommend write some interview questions down and think about your responses. So that helps you prepare for maybe the next set of interviews that come. If you do not get the job, do not take it personally. That's really, really important. I can't stress that enough. It's not a personal thing. It takes a committee. The committee decides. It's not one person or another. So really don't take it personally if you do get the position. Just try to learn from it. And I've even had candidates reach out to me who did not get the position and asked, what could they improve? And I was very honest and willing to tell them, what were some areas that, they struggled in a little bit. And that's okay too. If you're asked for a second online interview, and we did this because of the number of candidates that apply, be prepared for questions pertaining to your teaching, research, and service. So there are some more specific questions that they may ask you, and I'm going to just give you a sample very, very briefly here of one or two of them so that you can see it. I'm just going to highlight really two here. Question number 2, where do you see yourself professionally in the next 1, 3, 6 years, and how does this position at Kean University align with your long-term career goals? Next, I'd like to ask you is what strategies will you use to help Kean University's health education program stand out regionally or nationally? And then finally, how would you collaborate with others to achieve department, college, and university goals? So that's a team player question type there, where we'd like to see how you would, work with others in the department. And that's it. That is my final questions. And here's my email. And welcome to reach out to me anytime. And I hope this helps you nail down going for online interviews.
Thank you so much talking about like online interviews and sharing the specific questions. That'll be really helpful.
Sure.
Yes, and then the last presenter, Dr. Liu, will talk about on-campus interview.
All right, is my slide showing properly? Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for the invitation to this webinar. My name is Jinwen Liu. I am an associate professor at Cal State Fullerton. I just chaired the search committee for our PEAT program in the last academic year, and I'm very excited to share with you what's beyond the job talk and what such committees are really evaluating during those high-stakes campus interviews. So when you are invited to a campus interview, first of all, congratulations. You are highly qualified. So now the goal is to show the committee that you are the colleague that they can confidently bet on for the long haul, at least for 5 to 6 years until you get tenure. So to give you confidence, the committee would look at 3 areas, including reliability, trajectory, and fit. I'll explain what the search committee evaluate for and what they expect to observe in each area, starting with reliability. So you probably have heard, if not at least from Dr. Olson, that you want to be yourself and show a personality on a job interview, because if you fake something, it's not going to last long. And I think when people say be yourself, they actually mean be the same professional person, not just as a friend or a graduate student, but to be the professional, like a professor, and also across all contexts, whether you're in a formal interview or engaged in conversation with their students and staff or at lunch or dinner. The committee is trying to determine what it feels like to work with you on a daily basis. So they would look for some specific behaviors to gauge this. So, for example, can you stay calm and steady when something unexpected happens, like a technological issue, or when there's a polite disagreement? Can you answer question directly to the point without detouring or without over explaining? And I think Dr. Olson already mentioned that, right? You want to answer the question directly to the point, and if you need some time to think about it, ask for a pause would be great. And also, do you make an effort to interact with everyone, including those who are not on the committee? A simple act can be approaching faculty at lunch or before your research talk and thank them for their time. Your reliability is measured by how you treat the entire department, from the dean, the chair, faculty, the staff, and the students. So I made a separate slide about the questions candidate ask, because I feel most of the candidates spend tons of time preparing for how to answer questions, but the question you ask are just as important as the question you answer. So the question you ask, oftentimes they reveal your true motivation. So you want to show that you are genuinely interested in working here and ask questions about what they can probably tell you about. So, for example, you can ask things that you can ask about mentoring structure for new faculty, or specifics about their centers, their lab, or grants, if these are highlighted on their websites or during a visit. Because you don't want to ask a question and they awkwardly say, no, we don't have that. You can also use the questions to show your strengths, because the committee may not ask about them in their question list. So, for example, if you want to show that your strength is about community engagement or service learning, you can ask about how their students are getting early field experiences and go from there. On the other hand, you may want to avoid asking for information that is easily found on their website, because that shows that you didn't do your homework before the campus interview. And be careful not to sound transactional too early, such as asking about course releases or minimizing services. Question about vacation, housing, childcare, or visa. These are important questions. You can still ask a little bit, but don't make them the majority of your question. And they can generally be saved for HR meetings or during the negotiation phase. You want your first impression to be about your strength, your contribution, not just about your compensation. The second area is trajectory. So the committee wants to see where you are going as a scholar, and they expect to hear a clear, coherent, and independent path for your future. So when discussing your research, either during the interview or in your job talk, your research talk, you want to focus on 2 to 3 instead of all 15 scattering projects. And those 2 to 3 projects should be those one which you made major contributions to. So this will allow you to articulate what you have accomplished, such as I developed research questions from literature review, I collected data from 300 participants, or I wrote the entire discussion section in the manuscript, things like that. And also remember to discuss how a specific theoretical framework guides you flow from past research to your future research, because without it, you may risk leaving an impression that you're simply pursuing personal interest or cool ideas or buzzwords rather than building a systematic body of work, which is research. So when you show future research plan, try to tailor to that institution. And I think the previous presenters all tapped into this, talking about potential collaboration and how you fit that institution. So you can talk about how you plan to engage their students, utilize their lab spaces, or applying for fundings that fit their profile. So the final area is fit, which is often about understanding the department needs and being flexible. I really appreciate Dr. Olson, you shared all the interview questions. And I wish I knew these questions when I was looking for a position. And I think most of the time, the committee will share their needs pretty directly. They'll share, we need these courses to be covered, we need a research center to be expanded, or we need these services to be fulfilled, like advising, accreditation, or sitting on committees, things like that. So when the committee share about program needs, don't just give a generic, yes, I'll do whatever you ask me to do. Give them a solution. Explain how you would address these needs. So for example, you can start with acknowledging the reality, explain what you have heard and learn about their needs, and then connect your past experiences with their program needs. Tell them, because I have experience in X, I can help you achieve Y. And then finally, show flexibility, but show tiered flexibility. And that means being honest about what you can do on day one versus what you can develop with a bit of prep time or support. So here's one example. For example, you've heard a question say, we need you to teach, or we need someone to cover X, Y, and Z, these 3 courses. You can respond by saying, well, I'm teaching a very similar course to X, so I can teach it immediately in fall semester. I can also adapt to course Y and Z with some reasonable prep time. So maybe I can start teaching them in the spring, or I can teach Y if I have access to syllabus or, Canvas course share, things like that. Some resources, I can start teaching Y even in this fall semester. So by doing these 3 steps, you can show that you are both a specialist and also a team player. So here are some closing thoughts. First of all, you are qualified, so be confident. And then dress, speak, teach like a professor, like you're already working there, not as a graduate student. And then on your agenda, your research agenda, be the driver of your research, know where you're going and why you're going there, and solve their puzzle. Show the committee exactly how your specific skills and experiences would adjust their departmental needs. And that's it. Feel free to reach out to me via my email, and I'd be happy to take any questions. And best luck.
Thank you so much for the all four presenters talking about the all like detailed processes. And we can go move on to the like Q&A session. So I will ask some questions. Mm, Based on the chat, like I personally have a lot of questions to navigate this process. I'm also like graduate student looking for a job. So the first question is from Jong Ho. So he's interested in like teaching statements. So what components are pivotal for the statement? So maybe Dr. Starr can answer this question.
I think first and foremost, and others, please join in. Just one human here, but I think from a teaching statement, you're thinking about your philosophy, right? Like how you approach teaching. Like what is your personality? How are you going to create an environment for your students? Like that's extremely important in addition to what you have taught and maybe how your research complements that teaching experience as well, can be really helpful.
Mhm. Yeah, maybe it is related to this question. And then I was like, when I'm preparing my application packet, I was like concerned like whether I should like use like to be more explicit, like to use like the bullet points or just trying to write the narratives to show that. But I was concerned like you are going to review a lot of like application packets and then you'll be very tired of like reading all the cover letters and teaching statements. So would it be a good idea to include the list of bullet points?
My personal opinion is no. I think I talked about alignment quite a bit in the document review, right? So if you're putting that into um, your teaching statement about what your expertise areas are, how your research complements that particular area, we're also going to see that in your CV,
Mhm.
as well. And so that will come through to us. I think I would say keep it professional, in like a formal writing,
Mhm.
format. Other thoughts on that?
All right, so maybe the next question is for Dr. Olson. So how long do you expect the answer to be like for each question? So like how many like you showed like the list of questions, it was more than 10. So how like first question will be like how many questions is usually used for one interview and like how long do you expect to hear from one question?
Okay, it's a little bit of a moving target there, but I would say that we aim for about a 30-minute online interview.
Oh.
So if we ask 10 questions, let's say it's 3 minutes a question, that would roughly let's say 2 minutes a question with maybe 5 to 10 minutes of questions at the end. I don't know if you can put an exact time on it, but I would say, you want to be able to answer the question in a minute or two. And you just want to avoid any type of rambling or any type of just circuitous types of responses. Just, plain, direct, clear language is the best bet.
Mhm.
That's my example. And I think you also asked, should you put in concrete examples? And the answer is yes. I would put in concrete examples, drawing from your experiences as much as possible, and
Mhm.
showing the committee, this is what I've done, and this is what I, hope to achieve also moving in the future. And that
Mhm.
gives the committee confidence of what you're able to do. And Dr. Liu talked about trajectory, so that's one of the things that really helps when you're citing examples is that trajectory.
Mhm.
I could jump in real quick. One thing that I've noticed on online interviews is, folks not paying attention to the amount of questions and then also the time that's allotted. Is our time is really valuable and so is yours, right? And so, for example, if the search committee says that there's going to be 10 questions and we expect this to take about 30 minutes, being mindful of that in your response. We've had interviews at some point go to upwards of over like an hour and 15 minutes. And we're trying to be respectful of you and your answers, and we do want to hear them. But I think that also comes back to your preparedness, that Dr. Olson shared right away, to knowing what you want to say and preparing for that up front.
Mhm. Right. do we have more questions? I have a list of questions to ask. I want to give you opportunity, Youngshik or me. Like, can I ask silly questions? Like I found that like the background, like the Zoom background is sometimes I like use like the blurred background or just no background, but I prefer to use this type of like the what am I supposed to say? Is it like this visual background from to represent my like institution? So like is there any preference? Like I found that like sometimes some people use it and some people don't use it, and some people, when someone is using like the visual background like this can represent something else. Like, do you have any like thoughts on using this like virtual background? I know this is a silly question, but yeah.
I would just say as long as it looks professional, I think that's fine. It's really your discretion. But I wouldn't have like your laundry in the back behind you or something like that.
Yeah, agree. We have another question in the chat from Sian. So for professional references, do you prefer having professional references at different stage of academic yeah, and a professional career? So like if you have like work in a K-12, like you like to see like the K-12 like references, or do you like to see some more academic references? And I really want to know like how strong it'll be, like how important who should be the like my reference.
I think most of the candidates that we reviewed, I would say 95% or even higher, their references are seemingly having a title of doctor so and so. So assuming that that's from, not from K to 12, it's from a university. And I'm not sure about other university, but we only do reference check for finalists. So if we invite 3 finalists, we only check the 3 finalist reference. And I know other department, they only check who they want to hire. So they only contact 3 references in total. So but to your question, I think most references that I know are from a university.
Mhm. Oh, we have another chat question in the chat. So how long does the review process take after like application submission? So when will application receive response from the search committee? And if I add one more thing, like I like to see the timeline when I see the job advertisement. It's like, is it better to submit it right away or just wait until like prepare like fully and then just submit it before the deadline? Maybe it's a relevant question.
I think just before the deadline is key. It does not have to be in right away. Take your time to do it as long as it's by the deadline. And then I also think that, again, I mentioned this in my presentation, but even if you find that job posting and the deadline has passed, do not be afraid to still submit that. As we are constantly in the portal through the process. And if we think somebody is a qualified candidate, we may still choose to review them as long as we're not too far in the process. Um, I think as far as every university might be a little bit different, but we are advised not to reach out to folks who have applied until after the entire process is done. And actually, that comes automatically from our HR system when we go into your applicants of where they are in that process. So the process can take a really long time. So don't be discouraged. Just depending on holidays or breaks, things like that. Don't be discouraged, but I think it would be okay. And I think or Dr. Olson had mentioned like following up with a thank you is a really good thing to do and to stay in contact. And I think if you're still really interested and you haven't heard in a while, it is a-okay to reach out and check in on the process for you to kind of give you a peace of mind.
Mm, great.
And
So,
like some places won't even tell you. You just never hear back. So
mm,
it's a crummy part of the process for sure.
mm, Right. So as a applicant, like I prefer to get the response as soon as possible, but of course, like there's a different like expectations and different process. So yeah. And I think we're approaching to like the promised time. So once again, thank you so much for your time and preparing this presentation. I'm so grateful for your all like the presentation. So it'll be uploaded into our like YouTube channel. So I will stop recording here.